The sickening crack of a wooden gavel echoed through the dusty saloon as Nora Blackwood's trembling hands clutched her younger sister's fingers. Sold for $50 to the gentleman in the back. Her father bellowed, his alcohol-soaked breath wafting across the makeshift auction block where his own daughters stood like cattle. Nora's heart hammered against her ribs as she surveyed the crowd of leering men. Wyoming Territory, 1876, a land of opportunity for some, but for two young women with a gambling-addicted father, it had become their prison. At 22, Nora had spent years raising her 18-year-old sister Nellie after their mother's death, but nothing had prepared her for this betrayal. "You can't do this, Pa," Nora hissed, struggling to maintain her composure as rough hands seized her sister. "We're your daughters, not property." Jeremiah Blackwood barely spared his eldest daughter a glance, his bloodshot eyes already counting the meager pile of bills in his palm. "Should have thought about that before your ma died and left me with two useless mouths to feed. Your turn's coming, girl, might fetch a higher price with that spirit." Tears stung Nora's eyes as Nellie was dragged toward a heavyset miner with yellowed teeth and calloused hands. She lunged forward only to be yanked back by her father's iron grip. "Let me go," Nellie screamed, her golden curls flying as she fought against her buyer. "Nora!" The saloon doors suddenly burst open, silhouetting two tall figures against the harsh afternoon sunlight. The room fell silent as dust motes swirled in the beams of light cutting through the stale air. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," came a deep voice, steady and commanding. The crowd parted as two cowboys strode purposefully into the saloon. The taller one moved with the confidence of a man who commanded respect without asking for it. His partner, slightly shorter but broader across the shoulders, kept his hand hovering near the revolver strapped to his hip. "This is a private auction," Jeremiah spat, his knuckles whitening around the gavel. "State your business or get out." The taller cowboy removed his hat, revealing dark hair and piercing blue eyes that settled on Nora with an intensity that made her breath catch. "My name is Matthew Caldwell, and this is my brother Miles. Our business, sir, is preventing the illegal sale of human beings in Wyoming Territory." Miles stepped forward, his weathered face set in determination. "Last I checked, selling your own kin was against the law, even out here." Jeremiah's face flushed crimson. "These are my daughters. I can do with them as I please." "Not anymore," Matthew said, his voice dropping dangerously low. He turned to address the room. "Anyone who purchased or intended to purchase these women can collect their money and leave now. Anyone who argues can discuss the matter with the territorial marshal." His coat shifted enough to reveal the gleam of a badge pinned to his vest. The miner holding Nellie hesitated, glancing between the intimidating cowboys and Jeremiah's reddening face. "I said let her go," Miles repeated, his hand now resting openly on his gun. The saloon erupted into motion as men scrambled to retrieve their money, no one willing to tangle with the law over Jeremiah Blackwood's scheme. Nora watched in disbelief as Nellie was released, immediately rushing to her sister's side. "This ain't over," Jeremiah growled, stumbling as he backed away. "They're my flesh and blood." Matthew stepped closer to the sisters, positioning himself between them and their father. "Your right to them ended the moment you put them up for auction. You have exactly 1 minute to disappear before I arrest you for human trafficking." Jeremiah's face contorted with rage, but self-preservation won out. He snatched the money from the table and staggered toward the back door, pausing only to spit in Nora's direction. "Ungrateful brats, don't come crawling back when these men show their true colors." When the door slammed behind him, Nora finally allowed herself to breathe. Her legs threatened to give way as the reality of their narrow escape washed over her. "Are you both all right?" Matthew asked, his severe expression softening as he addressed the sisters. Nellie was sobbing quietly against Nora's shoulder. "Yes, no, I don't know," Nora stammered, trying to make sense of the last few minutes. "Thank you for stepping in, but who are you, really?" "Matthew Caldwell, Territorial Deputy Marshal," he replied, tucking his hat under his arm. "This is my brother Miles." We've been tracking your father for some time, gambling debts, swindling, and now this." His jaw tightened. "We didn't expect to find him auctioning his own daughters." Miles approached with 2 glasses of water. "Here," he offered, his voice gentler than his imposing frame suggested. "Drink something, you both look like you're about to faint." Nellie accepted the water with shaking hands. "What happens to us now?" she whispered. The question hung in the air as Nora realized they were truly alone. Their father was gone. Their small cabin technically belonged to the landlord who'd been pressing for rent, and they had no other family to turn to. "You have somewhere safe to go?" Matthew asked, studying Nora's face. She shook her head, drawing strength from somewhere deep inside. "No, but we'll manage. We always have." Matthew and Miles exchanged a look that communicated years of unspoken understanding. "Our ranch is about 10 miles outside of town," Miles said. "Our housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, could use some help. It would give you a place to stay until you figure things out." Nora stiffened, suspicion replacing gratitude. "And what would you expect in return, Mr. Caldwell?" Matthew's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed in understanding. "Nothing of the sort you're thinking, Miss Blackwood. Mrs. Abernathy is a respectable widow who's been with our family for years. You'd have your own quarters and fair wages. My brother and I spend most of our time working the ranch or handling marshal duties. We're offering honest work, not charity," Miles added. "And certainly not what these other men were after." Nora searched their faces for any sign of deception, but found only straightforward concern. With Nellie still trembling beside her and no better options in sight, she made her decision. "We accept your offer, Mr. Caldwell. For now." Matthew nodded, a hint of relief crossing his features. "Good, we'll leave as soon as you're ready. Do you need to collect any belongings?" "There's little worth taking," Nora admitted. "But yes, we should get our things." As they stepped out into the harsh Wyoming sunlight, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that their lives had just changed irrevocably. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. The Caldwell Ranch sprawled across a verdant valley nestled between rolling hills. After a tense wagon ride with few words exchanged, Nora found herself staring at a substantial 2-story house built of sturdy logs and stone. A barn and several outbuildings dotted the property, and in the distance, cattle grazed on lush grassland. "It's beautiful," Nellie whispered, some color returning to her cheeks for the first time since their ordeal. Matthew helped them down from the wagon. "It's not much compared to Eastern standards, but we've worked hard to make it thrive." "Your parents must be proud," Nora ventured, trying to understand the 2 brothers who had inexplicably come to their rescue. A shadow crossed Miles's face. "They passed some years back, Indian attack. Matthew and I have been running things since." "I'm sorry," Nora said softly, understanding loss all too well. The front door opened, revealing a plump woman with silver-streaked hair and a kind face. "There you are. I was beginning to worry." Her welcoming smile faltered when she spotted Nora and Nellie. "Matthew Caldwell, you didn't tell me you were bringing guests." "Mrs. Abernathy, these are the Blackwood sisters, Nora and Nellie," Matthew explained, guiding them forward. "They'll be staying with us for a while. I'll explain everything later." The housekeeper's shrewd eyes took in the sisters' disheveled appearance and frightened expressions. Whatever she concluded seemed to satisfy her as she nodded briskly. "Well then, you poor dears must be exhausted. Come inside and get washed up. Dinner will be ready in an hour." The interior of the house surprised Nora with its comfortable furnishings and tasteful decor. While not extravagant, it spoke of prosperity and care, a stark contrast to the squalid cabin they'd shared with their father. Mrs. Abernathy showed them to a modest but clean bedroom on the 2nd floor. "You'll share for now, if that's all right. The washroom is down the hall. There are fresh towels and some soap. I'll see if I can find you some clean clothes." When they were alone, Nellie collapsed onto one of the beds, tears flowing freely. "I can't believe Pa tried to sell us. Like we were nothing more than horses." Nora sat beside her sister, smoothing her tangled curls. "He's gone now, we're safe. Are we?" Nellie looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "How do we know these men are any better? They're strangers, Nora." "I don't know," Nora admitted. But they had the chance to take advantage and didn't. That counts for something in this world. She stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the expansive property. We'll stay alert, save our wages, and make our own way as soon as we can. In the yard below, she could see Matthew unhitching the horses, his movements efficient and purposeful. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, their eyes meeting briefly across the distance. Nora stepped back from the window, a strange flutter in her chest. "Come on," she said to Nellie. "Let's get cleaned up." At dinner, the atmosphere was awkward but not hostile. Mrs. Abernathy kept conversation flowing with questions about their skills and experience, which Nora answered carefully, omitting the worst details of their life with Jeremiah. "Nora's an excellent seamstress," Nellie volunteered, some of her natural animation returning. "She used to make dresses for the mayor's wife until we had to move," Nora finished quickly. "And Nellie has a way with animals. She can calm even the most skittish horse." Matthew raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? We have a mare no one can get near. Might be worth seeing if you have the touch." Nellie brightened. "I'd like to try." "And your sewing skills would be most welcome," Mrs. Abernathy told Nora. "I'm afraid these boys tear through clothes faster than I can mend them." Miles, who had been mostly silent, finally spoke. "You'll earn fair wages for any work you do. We're not offering charity, but we do believe in helping folks get back on their feet." "Why?" The question escaped Nora before she could stop it. "Why help us at all?" The brothers exchanged another of their communicative glances. It was Matthew who answered, his deep voice resonating in the quiet dining room. "Because 7 years ago, we couldn't help someone who needed it. We promised never to make that mistake again." The cryptic answer hung in the air, but neither brother seemed inclined to elaborate. After dinner, Nora helped Mrs. Abernathy clear the dishes despite the older woman's protests. In the kitchen, away from the brothers, the housekeeper spoke frankly. "Those boys saved you from something awful, didn't they?" Nora nodded, her hands stilling in the dishwater. "Our father tried to auction us off to the highest bidder. They stopped it." Mrs. Abernathy's expression hardened. "Lord have mercy. Well, you should know the Caldwell brothers are good men." "Hard men, yes, life out here demands it, but honorable to their cores. You and your sister are safe here." "Thank you for saying so," Nora replied, wanting desperately to believe it. "May I ask," Matthew mentioned someone they couldn't help. The housekeeper's face grew somber. "Their sister, Mary. She was 16 when the raid happened. Their parents were killed outright, but Mary was taken. By the time the brothers tracked down the war party, it was too late. They found her body 3 days later." She shook her head sadly. "Changed them both, especially Matthew. He joined the territorial marshals after that, determined to protect those who couldn't protect themselves." Nora absorbed this information, her heart aching for the brothers' loss. It explained their intervention at the saloon. They saw in her and Nellie echoes of their sister's fate. That night, lying beside her sleeping sister, Nora stared at the unfamiliar ceiling. Their situation remained precarious, dependent on the goodwill of strangers in a harsh land, but for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel something dangerously close to hope. Dawn broke with a chorus of roosters and the distant lowing of cattle. Nora woke to find Nellie already dressed in borrowed clothes that hung loosely on her slender frame. "Mrs. Abernathy left these for us," Nellie explained, indicating another set of clothes laid out on a chair. "She said to come down for breakfast when we're ready." Nora dressed quickly in a simple blue calico dress that had clearly been taken in hastily to better fit her. In the kitchen, they found Mrs. Abernathy presiding over a hearty breakfast of eggs, bacon, and biscuits. "There you are. The boys have been up for hours. Ranch work waits for no one. Matthew said to tell you he'd show you around after breakfast if you're feeling up to it." True to his word, Matthew appeared as they were finishing their meal. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in hand, looking more like an uncertain suitor than a territorial marshal. "If you ladies are ready, I thought I might show you the property," he offered, his usual authoritative tone softened. Outside, the ranch bustled with activity. Cowhands moved between paddocks, the blacksmith's hammer rang out from his forge, and in the distance, a group of riders herded cattle across a verdant pasture. Your operation is impressive, Nora commented as they walked. How long have you been here? Our father established the ranch 20 years ago, Matthew replied. Miles and I took over after. He paused. Well, after? Mrs. Abernathy told us about your sister, Nora said quietly. I'm truly sorry for your loss. Matthew's stride faltered momentarily. Thank you. It was a long time ago. But the tightness around his eyes told Nora it wasn't nearly long enough. They walked in silence until they reached the stables, where Miles was attempting to approach a beautiful chestnut mare who skittered nervously in her stall. This is Firefly, Matthew explained to Nellie. Found her abandoned as a foal after a wildfire. She's never taken to people, but we couldn't bring ourselves to put her down. Nellie's eyes lit up with interest. May I try? Miles gestured helplessly toward the stall. Be my guest, but mind your fingers. She's quick to bite. Nora watched in amazement as her sister transformed before her eyes. Nellie's usual timidity vanished as she approached the stall, speaking in a low, melodic voice that seemed to entrance the nervous animal. Within minutes, Firefly had stopped pacing and was cautiously extending her nose toward Nellie's outstretched hand. Well, I'll be damned, Miles muttered, then quickly added, Pardon my language, Miss Blackwood. Matthew's expression was equally impressed. You weren't exaggerating about your sister's way with animals, pride swelled in Nora's chest. Nellie has always had a gift. As Nellie continued to work her magic with the horse, Matthew guided Nora toward the house. Mrs. Abernathy mentioned you're skilled with a needle. We've set up a sewing area for you in the sunroom, if you'd like to see it. The sunroom was a bright, airy space with large windows overlooking a small garden. A sturdy table held a sewing machine, a luxury Nora hadn't enjoyed since leaving their previous home, and several baskets of mending waited nearby. It's perfect, Nora breathed, running her fingers over the machine's polished surface. But this is too generous. We can't accept it's not charity, Matthew interrupted firmly. It's an investment. Having someone handle repairs and make new garments when needed will save us money in the long run. His expression softened slightly. Besides, the machine was my mother's. It should be used, not gathering dust. Nora recognized the gesture for what it was, not just employment, but a tentative offering of trust. Thank you. I'll take good care of it. Something shifted in Matthew's blue eyes, a flicker of warmth that disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. I have to ride into town on marshal business. Miles will be around if you need anything. As he turned to leave, Nora called after him. Mr. Caldwell, he paused at the doorway. Matthew, please. Matthew, she amended, the name feeling strangely intimate on her tongue. Will my father be there, in town? His jaw tightened. If he is, he'll be arrested, but my guess is he's long gone. Men like Jeremiah Blackwood know when to disappear. The certainty in his voice was oddly comforting. Good, I hope I never see him again. On that, Miss Blackwood, we are in complete agreement. He settled his hat on his head with a nod. I'll be back by sundown. Alone in the sunroom, Nora ran her fingers over the piles of mending, mentally cataloging the work ahead. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of purpose that wasn't tied to mere survival. Whether this arrangement was temporary or not, she would make the most of it for herself and for Nellie. The days settled into a rhythm at the Caldwell Ranch. Nellie spent her mornings working with Firefly, whose trust she was slowly earning, and her afternoons helping Mrs. Abernathy with household chores. Nora established herself in the sunroom, efficiently working through the backlog of mending and even beginning to create new garments for the upcoming winter. Matthew was often absent on marshal business, but Miles proved to be a steady presence, his initially gruff demeanor gradually warming as he observed the positive changes the sisters brought to the ranch. Even the cowhands, initially suspicious of the newcomers, came to appreciate Nora's skill with a needle and Nellie's gentle way with injured animals. 2 weeks after their arrival, Nora was returning from the clothesline with a basket of dried linens when she heard raised voices from Matthew's study. Pausing in the hallway, she could make out Matthew and Miles in heated discussion. You're letting this become personal, Miles was saying. Harrison is baiting you and you know it. He's moving women across the territory like cattle, Matthew responded, his voice tight with anger. Girls younger than Mary was, someone has to stop him. And we will, but not by you riding off half-cocked into his territory alone. That's exactly what he wants. There was a heavy silence, then Matthew spoke again, his voice lower. I received word that 2 more girls went missing from Sweetwater. Sisters, Miles, just like the Blackwood girls would have been if we hadn't stepped in, I know. Miles's tone softened. But getting yourself killed won't help anyone. We do this smart or not at all. Nora backed away quietly, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping, but her mind raced with questions. Who was Harrison? What connection did he have to what had nearly happened to her and Nellie? And why did Matthew seem so personally invested? That evening at dinner, Matthew was uncharacteristically quiet, the conversation carried mostly by Mrs. Abernathy and Nellie, who excitedly reported her progress with Firefly. She let me brush her today, Nellie announced proudly. Mr. Miles says in another week we might try a saddle. That's wonderful, Nora encouraged, though her attention kept drifting to Matthew, who seemed lost in dark thoughts. After dinner, unable to contain her curiosity, Nora found Matthew on the front porch, staring out at the darkening landscape. She hesitated, then joined him at the railing. Penny for your thoughts, she offered quietly. He glanced at her, surprised by her presence. Not worth that much, I'm afraid. I couldn't help overhearing part of your conversation with Miles earlier, she admitted. This man, Harrison, is he connected to what happened to us? Matthew's expression hardened. You shouldn't concern yourself with such matters, Miss Blackwood. Nora, she corrected. And I think I have every right to concern myself with matters that might involve the selling of young women, considering recent events. He studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Richard Harrison runs a network of saloons and gambling houses across the territory. We have reason to believe he's also trafficking women, buying them from desperate families, or simply having them abducted. Nora's stomach twisted, like what my father tried to do. Your father was an opportunist. Harrison is systematic, organized, much more dangerous. Matthew's hand tightened on the porch railing. We've been building a case against him for months, but witnesses have a way of disappearing or changing their stories. And now more girls are missing, Nora concluded, remembering the fragment of conversation she'd overheard. Matthew nodded grimly. Sisters from Sweetwater, 14 and 16 years old. Nora felt physically ill. What can be done? Miles thinks we need more evidence before moving against Harrison directly, I think. He trailed off, shaking his head. It doesn't matter what I think, we'll handle it. It does matter, Nora insisted, surprising herself with her boldness. Those girls matter. Something shifted in Matthew's expression, respect, perhaps, or recognition. Yes, they do. After a moment's hesitation, he added, I'm riding to Sweetwater tomorrow to speak with the girls' parents. Miles is staying here. An unspoken question hung in the air. Was Nora concerned for her own safety with Matthew leaving? The realization that she wasn't, that she trusted Miles and the others at the ranch to protect her and Nellie, came as a surprise. Be careful, she said instead. Harrison sounds like a dangerous man. Matthew's mouth quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Why, Miss Blackwood, Nora, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were worried about me. The teasing tone was so unexpected from the normally serious marshal that Nora felt heat rise to her cheeks. Well, who would fix your torn shirts if something happened to you? Certainly not Miles. His stitches looked like they were done by a drunken bear. This time Matthew did smile, a transformation that made him look younger and less burdened. I'll be sure to return intact, if only to spare you from Miles's sewing attempts. As they stood together in comfortable silence, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky, Nora became acutely aware of Matthew's presence beside her, solid, reassuring, and increasingly familiar. The flutter she'd felt the first day returned, stronger now and undeniably alarming. Developing feelings for Matthew Caldwell would be foolish at best, dangerous at worst. Their arrangement was temporary, their worlds fundamentally different, and yet, standing beside him in the gathering darkness, Nora couldn't deny the pull she felt toward this complex, honorable man. Matthew departed for Sweetwater at dawn the next morning. Nora, awake early to finish mending his spare coat, handed it to him at the stables as he prepared his horse. The right sleeve was coming apart at the seam, she explained, passing him the neatly folded garment. I reinforced it. Should hold up better now. He accepted it with a nod of thanks. You didn't have to get up so early for this. I wanted to, she admitted. Safe travels, Matthew. Something unreadable flickered across his face. I'll be back in 3 days. Try to keep Miles and Mrs. Abernathy from arguing too much about the kitchen garden. Nora smiled at the reference to the good-natured bickering that regularly erupted between the younger Caldwell brother and their housekeeper. I'll do my best. As Matthew rode away, Nora couldn't shake a vague feeling of unease. Something about this mission felt different, more personal. She hoped her concerns were unfounded. The next 2 days passed uneventfully. Nora completed the last of the mending backlog and began work on new shirts for the ranch hands. Nellie continued to make progress with Firefly, who now allowed her to place a light saddle on her back, though riding was still out of the question. On the morning of the 3rd day, Nora was in the kitchen helping Mrs. Abernathy prepare dinner when they heard a commotion outside. Miles burst through the door, his expression grim. "Rider coming in fast," he announced. "It's Jameson from the marshal's office in Sweetwater." Nora's heart sank as she followed Miles and Mrs. Abernathy onto the porch. A dust-covered rider was dismounting from an exhausted horse, his face grave as he approached Miles. "Caldwell," the man acknowledged with a nod. "Got bad news, your brother's been shot." The world seemed to tilt beneath Nora's feet. "Is he?" she began, unable to finish the question. "He's alive," Jameson clarified quickly. "But it's bad. Took a bullet to the shoulder and another grazed his side. Doc Jenkins is tending to him at his office in Sweetwater. Matthew asked me to fetch you." Miles was already moving toward the stables. "I'll saddle up. We can be there by nightfall if we push hard." "I'm coming with you," Nora stated, her tone brooking no argument. Miles turned, clearly about to refuse, but something in her expression stopped him. After a moment's consideration, he nodded. "Pack light, we leave in 10 minutes. "Nellie should stay here with Mrs. Abernathy," Nora said, already mentally cataloging what supplies they might need. "She'll be safer." The ride to Sweetwater was punishing. Miles set a grueling pace, speaking little except to occasionally check if Nora could continue. Despite the ache in her muscles and the dust coating her throat, she never complained, driven by the image of Matthew lying wounded in some doctor's office. They reached Sweetwater just as the sun was setting, the small frontier town already transitioning from daytime commerce to evening revelry. Miles led them directly to a modest building with a doctor sign hanging outside. Inside, they found Matthew conscious but pale, his upper body heavily bandaged. Relief flooded his features when he saw his brother, but surprise and something else Nora couldn't quite identify registered when he spotted her. "What happened?" Miles demanded, moving to his brother's bedside. Matthew winced as he shifted position. "Harrison's men, ambush outside the Miller farm. I was interviewing them about their missing daughters." "Did you find the girls?" Nora asked quietly. Matthew's expression darkened. "No, the Millers retracted their story, said the girls ran off with traveling salesmen, but their faces told a different tale. They were terrified." "Harrison got to them," Miles concluded grimly. "Almost certainly." Matthew attempted to sit up straighter, grimacing with the effort. "But I found something else. A ledger in Harrison's office at the Red Eagle Saloon. Names, dates, amounts, evidence of his trafficking operation." "You broke into Harrison's office." Miles looked both impressed and exasperated. "How'd you manage that with 2 bullet holes in you?" "Got shot after," Matthew admitted. "The ledger's hidden under a floorboard in my hotel room. We need to get it to Judge Wilson in Cheyenne immediately." Nora stepped forward. "You're not going anywhere in this condition." "She's right," came the authoritative voice of a gray-haired man entering the room. "Doc Jenkins," he introduced himself to Nora. "Your friend here needs at least 2 weeks of rest before even thinking about travel." "We don't have 2 weeks," Matthew argued. "Harrison knows I have the ledger. He'll tear this town apart looking for it." Miles straightened. "I'll take it to Cheyenne." "Too risky," Matthew countered. Harrison's men know you're my brother. They'll be watching for you." A tense silence fell over the room as they considered their limited options. Finally, Nora spoke up. "I'll take it." 3 male heads swiveled toward her in unified disbelief. "Absolutely not," Matthew stated flatly. "Hear me out," Nora insisted. "No one knows I'm connected to you except the people in this room. I'm just another woman passing through. Harrison's men won't look twice at me." "It's too dangerous," Miles objected, though with less conviction than his brother. "More dangerous than leaving Matthew here while Harrison's men search for the ledger," Nora challenged. "I can take the morning stage to Cheyenne, deliver the ledger to Judge Wilson, and be back before anyone realizes what's happened." Dr. Jenkins stroked his beard thoughtfully. "The girl makes a good point. Harrison's watching for lawmen, not ladies." Matthew's face was a storm of conflicting emotions. "Nora, if anything happened to you, nothing will happen," she assured him with more confidence than she felt. "I'll be on a public stagecoach the entire way. Miles can stay here to protect you while you recover." The brothers exchanged one of their communicative looks. Finally, Matthew sighed in defeat. "The hotel is 2 blocks down, room 204. The ledger is under the loose floorboard beneath the bed, but Nora," his voice softened. "If there's any sign of trouble, any at all, you get yourself to safety. The ledger isn't worth your life." The intensity in his eyes sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with fear. "I understand." That night, Nora lay awake in a small room above the doctor's office, her mind racing with thoughts of the dangerous mission ahead. She had spoken bravely, but now, alone in the darkness, doubts crept in. What did she know about evading dangerous criminals? What if she failed and the evidence was lost and, beneath these practical concerns, lay a deeper question? Why had she volunteered? Was it purely to help the missing girls, as she told herself? Or was it also because of the way Matthew had looked at her with concern, yes, but also with a respect she'd rarely experienced from any man? Morning arrived with no answers, only the certainty that she had committed to this path and would see it through. After a brief breakfast, Miles escorted her to Matthew's hotel room, keeping watch in the hallway while she retrieved the hidden ledger, a nondescript black book that belied its explosive contents. "Keep it in your satchel," Miles instructed as they walked toward the stagecoach office. "Act natural." The stage leaves in 20 minutes and arrives in Cheyenne by nightfall. Judge Wilson's office is across from the territorial courthouse. Nora nodded, clutching her small traveling bag containing the precious ledger. "Take care of your brother and tell him." She hesitated. "Tell him I'll be careful." Miles studied her face for a moment, then said quietly, "He cares for you, you know, more than he's admitted to himself." Before she could respond to this unexpected revelation, the stagecoach rattled into view. "That's your ride," Miles said, helping her aboard. "Godspeed, Nora Blackwood." The journey to Cheyenne passed without incident, though Nora's nerves remained on edge. Every time the coach stopped to change horses or allow passengers to stretch their legs, she expected to see Harrison's men approaching. But the hours ticked by peacefully, and as twilight descended, the growing silhouette of Cheyenne appeared on the horizon. Judge Wilson proved to be a stern-faced man with kind eyes who listened intently as Nora explained the ledger's origins and significance. "Matthew Caldwell sent you with this," he clarified, examining the book's detailed entries. "Yes, sir. He was injured preventing it from falling into the wrong hands." The judge nodded gravely. "This is exactly what we've needed to move against Harrison. Names, dates, amounts paid, even destinations for some of the women." He closed the ledger with a decisive snap. "Miss Blackwood, you've done a great service today. With this evidence, I can issue warrants immediately." Relief washed over her. "So it's over. Harrison will be arrested." "He'll certainly be pursued with the full force of territorial law," Judge Wilson assured her. "But men like Harrison rarely surrender easily. It may take time to bring him to justice." As Nora prepared to board the return stage the next morning, a telegram arrived from Miles. "Harrison men searching town stop do not return to Sweetwater stop Matthew being moved to ranch tomorrow stop meet U.S. their stop Miles changing her plans accordingly." Nora boarded a stage heading toward the Caldwell Ranch instead. The detour would add a day to her journey, but knowing Matthew would be safely home eased her mind. What she didn't anticipate was the coach breaking down halfway to their destination, leaving passengers stranded at a remote way station until repairs could be completed. The delay stretched from hours into a full day, testing Nora's patience and amplifying her concern for Matthew's condition. When she finally arrived at the Caldwell Ranch 3 days after leaving Sweetwater, the sun was setting in a spectacular blaze of orange and gold. Mrs. Abernathy spotted her from the porch and hurried to meet the coach. "Thank heavens you're safe. We've been worried sick," the housekeeper exclaimed, embracing Nora tightly. "Nellie's been beside herself, and Matthew, well, he's been impossible since they brought him home yesterday." "How is he?" Nora asked, fatigue momentarily forgotten in her concern. "Stubborn as a mule and twice as irritable," Mrs. Abernathy reported with fond exasperation. "Keeps trying to get out of bed despite the doctor's orders. Perhaps you can talk some sense into him." Nellie came flying down the porch steps, throwing her arms around her sister. "Nora, I was so scared when they said you went to Cheyenne alone." "I'm fine," Nora assured her, returning the embrace. "Just tired from the journey." Miles appeared in the doorway, relief evident in his expression. "About time you showed up. My brother's driving everyone to distraction worrying about you." Something warm unfurled in Nora's chest at his words. "The stage broke down, and I delivered the ledger safely to Judge Wilson." "We know," Miles confirmed. "Wilson telegraphed yesterday. Warrants have been issued for Harrison and his associates. Several arrests have already been made." "And the missing girls?" Miles's expression sobered. "No sign of them yet, but with Harrison's organization crumbling, we have hope they'll be found." Inside the house, Nora paused outside Matthew's bedroom door, suddenly uncertain. 3 days ago, she'd volunteered for a dangerous mission partly to impress this man. Now, facing the prospect of seeing him again, she felt unaccountably nervous. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly. "Go away, Miles. I'm not taking more of that blasted sleeping powder," came Matthew's irritated voice. Nora smiled despite herself and opened the door. "It's not Miles." Matthew was propped up against several pillows, his upper body still bandaged but his color much improved from when she'd last seen him. At the sight of her, he attempted to sit up straighter, wincing with the effort. "Nora," he breathed, relief washing over his features. "You're all right." "I'm fine," she assured him, moving to sit in the chair beside his bed. "Judge Wilson received the ledger and issued warrants immediately. Harrison's operation is being dismantled as we speak." Pride and something warmer flickered in Matthew's eyes. "You did well, better than well. You may have saved dozens of lives with your courage." "I was glad to help," she said simply. Matthew's hand moved to cover hers where it rested on the edge of the bed. "When the stage was delayed and we couldn't reach you, I feared the worst. I realized how much," he broke off, seeming to struggle with his words. "How important you've become. To the ranch," he added quickly. "To all of us." Nora felt the heat of his hand on hers, saw the vulnerability in his usually guarded expression, and made a decision. "Matthew," she said softly, "I think we both know it's more than that." For a long moment he was silent, his blue eyes searching hers. Then, his voice rough with emotion, he admitted, "Yes, it is much more." The kiss that followed was gentle, mindful of his injuries, but filled with a promise that made Nora's heart soar. When they finally parted, Matthew kept hold of her hand. "I can't offer you an easy life," he warned. "Being a marshal's wife means worry and sometimes danger." "Wife." Nora echoed, her eyebrows rising in surprise. Matthew looked suddenly uncertain. "I'm getting ahead of myself. We've only known each other a short time, but I know what I feel, Nora. I've never felt this way about anyone." She squeezed his hand, her smile radiant despite her exhaustion. "Perhaps we should start with courting properly before discussing marriage." Relief and happiness transformed his face. "I'd like that very much." As summer turned to autumn on the Caldwell Ranch, healing took many forms. Matthew's wounds mended steadily, allowing him to gradually resume his duties. The missing sisters from Sweetwater were found alive in a Denver brothel and reunited with their parents. Richard Harrison was captured trying to flee to Mexico and brought to trial, his network of criminal enterprises dismantled. For Nora and Nellie, healing meant establishing roots in a place they now considered home. Nellie's gift with animals earned her increasing responsibility in the stables, where Firefly had progressed to accepting a rider, but only Nellie. Nora's sewing skills expanded beyond mending to creating garments that local townswomen commissioned after seeing her work. Matthew courted Nora with a combination of awkwardness and determination that endeared him to her even more. Unused to romance, he sometimes stumbled in his efforts, but the sincerity behind his gestures wildflowers gathered during his rounds, a handcrafted bookshelf for her growing collection of novels. Patient lessons in shooting a revolver for self-defense spoke volumes about his feelings. On a crisp October evening, Matthew asked Nora to accompany him on a ride to his favorite spot on the property, a small rise overlooking the valley, where the setting sun painted the landscape in gold and crimson. There, with the ranch spread out below them like a promise of the future, he formally asked for her hand in marriage. "I love you, Nora Blackwood," he said, his voice steady despite the nervous energy she could sense in him. "You brought light back into my life when I thought darkness was all that remained. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears of joy blurred her vision as she accepted, the simple gold ring he offered gleaming in the fading sunlight. "Yes, Matthew, yes, with all my heart." Their wedding took place in early December, a joyous celebration that brought together the entire ranch community. Nellie served as maid of honor, radiantly happy for her sister and secure in her own place at the ranch. Miles stood as best man, his usual stoicism giving way to genuine emotion as he welcomed Nora officially into the family. As she spoke her vows, Nora reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. From the horror of being auctioned by her own father to finding love, purpose, and family with the very man who had saved her, life had taken an unexpected but beautiful turn. Later, during the wedding celebration, Miles raised his glass in a toast. To Matthew and Nora, proof that even in the hardest times, goodness can prevail and love can heal what's broken. Matthew's arm tightened around Nora's waist as cheers erupted around them. "He's right, you know," he murmured against her ear. "You've healed parts of me I thought would stay broken forever." "We healed each other," she replied softly, "and we'll build something beautiful from here." 1 year later, on a warm spring morning, Nora stood on the porch of the Caldwell ranch, watching as Matthew taught their infant son to ride by sitting him on his shoulders. Nearby, Nellie guided a young girl through her first interaction with Firefly's new foal. The girl, Sarah, was one of 3 orphaned sisters they had welcomed into their growing family 6 months earlier, children rescued from circumstances similar to what Nora and Nellie had faced. With Matthew's position as marshal and the security of the ranch, they were uniquely positioned to offer sanctuary to those who needed it most. Miles approached, carrying his ledger of ranch accounts. "We're going to need to expand the house at this rate," he commented, nodding toward the children. "4 young ones already, and I have a feeling you 2 aren't finished." Nora smiled, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. She hadn't told Matthew yet about the new life growing within her. That news was for tonight, their anniversary. "Family comes in many forms," she replied. "Some by birth, some by choice, all precious." Miles nodded in understanding. His own courtship of the schoolteacher in town was progressing steadily, adding another dimension to their expanding family circle. As twilight descended and the children were settled for the night, Nora and Matthew stood together on the same porch where they had first begun to understand their feelings for each other 2 years earlier. The ranch spread before them, peaceful in the gathering darkness. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Caldwell," Matthew murmured, his arms encircling her from behind. Nora leaned into his embrace, content beyond words. "I have a gift for you," she said softly. "Oh," his voice was curious. "I thought we agreed to keep things simple this year." Turning in his arms, she took his hand and placed it gently over her midsection. "Some gifts can't be wrapped, Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by joy so pure it took her breath away. "Another baby, are you certain?" she nodded, laughing as he lifted her off her feet in his excitement. "Careful, there are children sleeping inside." Setting her down gently, Matthew kissed her with a tenderness that still made her heart race. "I love you, Nora Caldwell, more with each passing day." As stars appeared in the vast Wyoming sky, Nora reflected on the journey that had brought them here from that terrible day in a dusty saloon to this moment of perfect happiness. Life on the frontier remained challenging, often dangerous, but filled with purpose and love. From auction block to beloved wife, from homeless sister to respected healer of animals, she and Nellie had found not just safety but true belonging. And as she stood in her husband's embrace, their growing family sleeping peacefully inside the home they had built together, Nora knew with absolute certainty that no auction price could ever have measured the true value of the life they now shared. "I love you too," she whispered against Matthew's chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her cheek. "Today, tomorrow, and all the days to come." In the distance, a coyote called to the rising moon, its wild song a reminder of the untamed beauty that surrounded them. But here, within the circle of Matthew's arms, Nora had found the rarest treasure of all, a place to call home, and a love powerful enough to heal the deepest wounds. As the years passed, the Caldwell Ranch flourished into more than just a successful cattle operation. It became a sanctuary for those in need. Matthew continued his work as a marshal, his reputation for justice and compassion growing throughout the territory. With Nora by his side, they developed a network of safe houses for women and children escaping dangerous situations, their own experiences fueling their determination to make a difference. Nellie, once the timid younger sister, blossomed into a confident young woman renowned for her ability to heal and train even the most troubled animals. When the territorial governor's prized stallion was deemed unrideable, it was Nellie Blackwood who was summoned to gentle the magnificent beast. Her success led to more opportunities, and eventually she established a horse breeding program that produced some of the finest mounts in Wyoming. Miles Caldwell found happiness with Emma, the schoolteacher whose quiet strength matched his own. Together, they added twin daughters to the extended family, girls whose laughter filled the expanded homestead where all the Caldwells now lived in connected but separate quarters. Nora and Matthew's family grew to include 4 children of their own, 2 sons and 2 daughters, plus the 3 orphan sisters they had adopted. Each child, whether born to them or chosen, thrived in the atmosphere of love and purpose that defined the Caldwell home. On Nora and Matthew's 10th wedding anniversary, a special package arrived from Cheyenne. Inside was a formal pardon and apology from the territorial governor for Jeremiah Blackwood's attempted sale of his daughters, along with news that reformed laws now explicitly prohibited such practices throughout Wyoming Territory. "Your courage in coming forward about your experience helped shape this legislation," the accompanying letter explained. "Many families will be protected because you were willing to share your story." That night, after the children were asleep, Nora and Matthew sat together on their porch swing, the letter resting between them. 10 years, Matthew marveled, his hand warm around hers. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I walked into that saloon and saw you standing there. And sometimes it feels like I've loved you my entire life," Nora replied, resting her head on his shoulder. The years had added strands of silver to Matthew's dark hair and fine lines around his eyes, but to Nora, he had only grown more handsome with time. "Do you ever wonder what became of your father?" Matthew asked quietly. Nora considered the question. "Sometimes, not because I miss him, but because I hope he found some peace. Hatred is a heavy burden to carry." Matthew kissed her temple, marveling again at the compassion that defined his wife. "You have the most generous heart of anyone I've ever known." "I learned that from you," she countered. "A less compassionate man would have simply arrested my father that day and left us to fend for ourselves. Instead, you offered us a home." "Best decision I ever made," Matthew murmured against her hair. "Though I confess my motives weren't entirely selfless even then. There was something about you, Nora Blackwood, that captured me from the first moment. She smiled, remembering her own confusion of feelings in those early days. We've built something beautiful here, haven't we? Not just for ourselves, but for others. As if to underscore her words, a light appeared in the window of the newest addition to their expanding homestead, a dormitory-style building, where currently 7 women and their children were finding temporary refuge while establishing independent lives. The Caldwell Sanctuary, as it had come to be known, offered not just physical safety but education, skills training, and the emotional support needed to recover from trauma. I received a letter from Judge Wilson today, Matthew said after a comfortable silence. The last of Harrison's associates has been sentenced. His network is truly finished. Nora squeezed his hand, knowing how much this milestone meant to him. The fight against human trafficking had defined much of Matthew's career as a marshal, driven by both his sister's memory and his determination to prevent others from suffering similar fates. Mary would be proud of you, Nora said softly, naming his sister in a way they rarely did. Of all you've accomplished in her name, Matthew's arm tightened around her, she would have loved you almost as much as I do. Inside the main house, the soft wailing of their youngest daughter interrupted the moment. Matthew rose immediately. I'll get her. You stay and enjoy the quiet. Nora watched him go, marveling at how naturally this once solitary man had taken to fatherhood. The nightmares that had once plagued him, memories of finding his sister's body, of battles during his early martial days, had gradually receded as their family grew and healed together. Alone on the porch, Nora gazed up at the vast Wyoming sky, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet darkness. From the distant pastures came the low sounds of cattle, from the bunkhouse the occasional burst of laughter as the ranch hands enjoyed their evening rest. This land that had once seemed so harsh and unforgiving had become her truest home. The man who had rescued her from auction had become her partner in all things. The sister she had protected through childhood had grown into a strong, independent woman with her own path. And Nora herself had transformed from a desperate young woman fighting merely to survive into someone with purpose, influence, and the profound satisfaction of making a difference in others' lives. When Matthew returned with their daughter cradled against his chest, the baby already drifting back to sleep, Nora's heart swelled with a happiness so complete it almost overwhelmed her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, settling beside her with their child nestled between them. "I'm thinking about value," Nora replied thoughtfully. "About how my father thought my worth could be measured in dollars at an auction, how wrong he was." Matthew's free hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with the practiced ease of a decade's partnership. "Your worth is beyond measure, Nora Caldwell. Every life you've touched, every person you've helped, every moment of joy you've brought to this family, priceless, all of it." As their daughter sighed contentedly in her sleep, Nora leaned against her husband's strong shoulder, the warmth of their connection keeping the night's chill at bay. From a moment of terrible vulnerability had come strength beyond imagining. From the threat of being sold to the highest bidder had come the freedom to choose a life of meaning and purpose. "I love you, Matthew Caldwell," she whispered, "today and always." His response was as steady and true as the man himself. "And I love you, Nora. With everything I am and everything I will ever be." Together they sat in the peaceful Wyoming night, surrounded by the legacy they had built not just of blood and name, but of compassion, courage, and unwavering love. A legacy that had begun the moment 2 determined cowboys rode into a dusty saloon to prevent an auction that should never have taken place. An auction that, in failing, had ultimately given Nora and Nellie Blackwood not masters, but champions. Not buyers, but family. Not a price tag, but something infinitely more valuable, the chance to discover their own immeasurable worth.